Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on notification. Samuel Cole was 39. When the life he had meticulously constructed began to fracture. It happened on an ordinary Wednesday in September. Though the Fishers, they had been there long before. He was an operations director at a regional shipping firm. A recent promotion had necessitated the move. They had settled in Crestwood Hills, a suburb whose name promised both elevation and tranquility. The house was the physical manifestation of his efforts. A two-story colonial, with a deep green lawn, and a driveway that could fit 4 cars. It was everything he thought he was supposed to want. Inside, the rooms were large, and mostly empty, echoing with the silence of a life not yet lived within them. 3 bedrooms, a sprawling backyard, a 2-car garage. The neighbors had waved their smiles, uniform and welcoming. This was the reward for his long hours, for the years spent climbing a ladder he had chosen without much thought. Rosalind Cole, 31 years old, had agreed to the move. She had quit her job as a marketing coordinator, a role she was good at, to follow him. "It's going to be an adventure, Sam," she had said, her smile bright under the vaulted ceiling of their new living room. It was the same smile that had captivated him 5 years ago. They had been married for 3 of those years. A period Samuel believed had been long enough to learn every detail of the woman standing before him. He watched her now. Her optimism, a stark contrast to the dull ache of pressure he felt. He felt the familiar, dull ache of a distance he couldn't quite name. He was wrong about knowing her. He was wrong about almost everything. The early days of their marriage, a blur of ambition. His ambition. He recalled late nights at his old office. Dinners eaten alone from takeout containers. Weekends spent poring over logistics reports. He had justified it all as building a future, a foundation for the very house they now stood in. Rosalind had been patient. Or so he had told himself. He assumed his sacrifice was their shared sacrifice. Now, watching her explore the new town with an energy he couldn't muster, he felt a strange sense of displacement. While Samuel spent 12-hour days learning the intricacies of a larger distribution network, Rosalind flourished. She discovered the local farmers market. She joined the community fitness center. She seemed to collect friends with an effortless grace. In less than 3 weeks, she had a circle. There was Jenna, a sharp-witted 32-year-old, married to an orthodontist. And Catherine, 28, and the wife of a financial advisor. He would come home, exhausted, smelling of cardboard and diesel fumes, to find the house filled with the faint scent of coffee, and the lingering energy of conversation. Rosalind would be vibrant, recounting her day, her new friends, their morning walks. Samuel genuinely tried to feel happy for her. He knew leaving her career had been a significant change. Seeing her so integrated, so full of plans, was supposed to make him feel the move had been the right choice. It was supposed to. Instead, a quiet, uncharitable part of him felt a flicker of resentment. Her new life seemed so easy, so untethered from the burdens that weighed him down. He was the anchor. She was the kite. It was on a Tuesday night, during dinner, that Rosalind mentioned the book club. She mentioned it casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. "Jenna invited me to join a reading group," she said, pushing a piece of chicken around her plate with her fork. He noted the gesture. A nervous habit, one he hadn't seen in some time. "It meets every Wednesday. At a woman's house named Beatrice. She lives 3 streets over. Sounds interesting, don't you think?" Samuel looked up from his pasta. He manufactured a smile. "A book club," he said, the words lighter than his thoughts. "You never seemed like much of a reader, Roz." Roz, who hadn't finished a novel since their honeymoon, preferring the quick gloss of magazines and the endless scroll of social media. "But if it's something you're into," he continued, "you should go for it." Rosalind's smile in return was one of visible relief. "I just want to do something productive, you know? I don't want to just sit around all day while you're at work." It made sense. It sounded healthy. He had no logical reason to object, so he buried the illogical ones. The first Wednesday came. At 2 in the afternoon, Rosalind emerged from their bedroom. She wore a light sundress and sandals. Samuel was in the living room, a laptop open with work reports he couldn't focus on. He noticed she had showered before leaving, something she rarely did for casual outings. He also registered the scent of her most expensive perfume. The one he had given her for their first anniversary. The one she saved for special occasions. "I don't know what time I'll be back, but probably around 7, she said, leaning down to kiss his cheek. The kiss was brief. A formality. He just nodded, his eyes fixed on the spreadsheet in front of him. When Rosalind returned that night, she was energetic. Her cheeks were flushed. She spoke about the women she had met. How the book discussion had been surprisingly deep. "What book are you reading?" Samuel asked. His tone, carefully neutral. "Oh, it's a romance novel. About complicated relationships," she replied, turning away to hang up her purse. "Kind of complex." He didn't press for a title. Weeks turned into months. Wednesday afternoons became a fixed point in their weekly schedule. As predictable as Samuel's 6 a.m. alarm. For 3 months. Rosalind never missed a single meeting. Over time, Samuel began to notice the small things. The details that, on their own, meant nothing. But together, they formed a pattern. A nagging discomfort he couldn't ignore. The pre-outing shower was a constant. The careful selection of clothes became a ritual. He would sometimes hear her change outfits 2 or 3 times. The expensive perfume was always present. And when she came back around 7, her hair was often slightly disheveled. Her face flushed with a color that didn't come from sitting in a stuffy living room discussing literature. She carried a different energy. A wire-taut vibrancy that seemed more fitting for someone returning from something far more intense than a simple book meeting. "It's so hot in Beatrice's house," she would say, with a quick laugh, if he commented on her appearance. He would pretend to accept the explanation. But the small, cold voice in his head had already taken root. It whispered to him during his long commutes. It kept him company during his solitary dinners. It told him he was a fool. The confirmation he didn't know he was looking for arrived on a Tuesday. Delivered by a man he barely knew. Samuel was in the break room at work, pouring himself a cup of bitter, stale coffee. David, a new warehouse supervisor, was leaning against the counter, chuckling to himself as he looked at his phone. "Sorry, man," David said, noticing Samuel's glance. "It's my friend Troy. This guy is unbelievable." Samuel, merely feigning politeness, asked, "What did he do now?" David hesitated for a second, as if deciding whether the story was appropriate. Then he sighed. "Troy's got this thing every Wednesday. He goes to this private gathering in a residential neighborhood not far from here, Crestwood Hills, actually." David paused. "The women tell their husbands they're going to a book club, but it's something else. Nothing to do with reading." He gave a half smile, uncomfortable. "It's a whole, let's just say, liberal scene. He says it's just married people looking for discreet fun. Sounds insane, but he never misses a week." Samuel felt the coffee cup tremble in his hand. It was as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over his head. Wednesdays. Book club. Residential neighborhood. The words lined up in his mind, like puzzle pieces he never wanted to put together. He forced a laugh. A dry, cracking sound. He pretended the story was ridiculous. He changed the subject to quarterly shipping projections. The rest of the day was a blur. He drove home on autopilot, his hands sweating on the steering wheel. Rosalind was in the kitchen when he arrived, humming softly as she prepared dinner. She came over, gave him a quick kiss, and asked how his day was. "Tired," Samuel mumbled, moving past her toward the bedroom. Sitting on the edge of their bed, he tried to reason with himself. "You're overreacting." David hadn't mentioned a specific address. Thousands of women met for book clubs on Wednesdays. It could just be a coincidence. But deep down, the quiet voice was no longer whispering. It was screaming. Screaming that it wasn't. In the days that followed, Samuel became an obsessive observer. He watched her every move. On Saturday, he asked again about the book. "What's it about now?" "It's about a woman who uncovers secrets from her past," she answered. Scrolling on her phone. Without looking at him. What's the title? He pressed. Oh, I always forget the title. It has a red cover. The answer was too vague. He realized. Rosalind never brought a book home. Never quoted a line. Never mentioned an author. Then there was the phone. Before, it sat on the coffee table, face up and forgotten. Now, it was always with her. In her purse. In her pocket. Face down. One night, while she was in the shower, Samuel picked it up. His thumb swiped across the screen. Only to be met by a passcode request. She had never, ever, bothered with a passcode before. It was a digital wall. Erected specifically to keep him out. He placed the phone back on the nightstand, his heart pounding with a cold, hard certainty. The next Tuesday, Samuel made a decision. He was done guessing. On Wednesday morning, Samuel called his office. He told his supervisor he had an urgent doctor's appointment. Some routine tests that couldn't be rescheduled. His supervisor, who trusted him implicitly, approved the absence without a single question. The ease of the deception made Samuel's stomach turn. He spent the morning pacing the house. A restless energy coursing through him. He checked the clock. Constantly. At precisely 2 p.m., Rosalind left. She was dressed up, perfumed, her bag slung over her shoulder. "I'll be back around 7, she said, reciting the line from a script he now knew by heart. She got into her silver sedan and drove off down the quiet suburban street. Samuel waited 5 minutes. An eternity of measured breaths. He grabbed his keys, got into his own car, and began to follow. He kept a safe distance. She seemed calm, navigating the familiar streets. Then she turned into a more secluded area, one with larger houses set back from the road, behind tall hedges and old trees. Finally, she pulled up in front of a large brick house, with walls that blocked most of the view from the street. Samuel saw other women arriving, all dressed more carefully than one would expect for a simple book meeting. An older woman with blonde hair, who he assumed was Beatrice, greeted each one at the door with hugs and smiles. Rosalind went inside, and the heavy oak door shut behind her. Samuel parked 2 blocks down. He just sat there, trying to steady his breathing. His heart was pounding too hard. After what felt like an hour, he got out of the car and walked back, staying on the opposite side of the street. Behind the property, where the vegetation was thickest, he found a section of the wrought iron fence that was lower than the rest. With a surge of adrenaline, he pulled himself over, dropping down silently into the damp soil behind a thick oak tree. From there, he had a partial view of the backyard, the pool area, and what he saw made his stomach clench into a tight, painful knot. At least 20 people, scattered around the outdoor space. Loud music pulsed from hidden speakers. People held drinks. Their laughter was exaggerated, shrill. They stood too close to one another. Their hugs lingered. Their hands rested on backs and waists in ways that went far beyond acceptable social norms. This was not an innocent gathering. It was intimate, charged with a current of hidden intentions. He recognized Rosalind almost immediately. She was standing next to a dark-haired man, broad-shouldered and confident. His hand was resting possessively on the small of her back. They were laughing, their heads close together. The man leaned in and whispered something in her ear. And Rosalind didn't pull away. On the contrary, she looked comfortable, engaged, and pleased. Nearby, Jenna was at the edge of the pool with another man, laughing loudly as he touched her arm. Catherine was dancing in the middle of a small group, surrounded, touched casually, as if this were routine. Samuel's hand started shaking as he pulled out his phone. For a few seconds, he fought with himself. Part of him wanted to leave, to climb back over the fence and pretend he hadn't seen anything. Another part, the cold, methodical part that was now in control, knew that without proof, he would be seen as paranoid. Even by himself. He pressed record. He held the phone steady, capturing a few minutes of the scene. He didn't need incriminating details. Just enough to show what any person would understand. His wife, in a place she shouldn't be, being intimate with another man. When he felt he couldn't watch any longer, he put the phone in his pocket. He climbed back over the fence, and he walked back to the front of the house. His head felt heavy. His heart was racing, but a strange coldness was forming inside him. Like a switch had been flipped off. He walked up the stone path. And he rang the doorbell. He pressed it hard. More than once. Until Beatrice appeared, her expression clearly annoyed. "Can I help you?" she asked. Samuel didn't wait for an invitation. He pushed the door open just enough to step inside. And he walked down the hallway, guided by the music, coming from the back of the house. When he reached the opening to the outdoor patio, and the music cut off, the moment someone noticed him, he shouted Rosalind's name. The sound echoed through the yard like a thunderclap. Conversation stopped. All eyes turned to him. People instinctively adjusted their clothes, grabbed towels, stepped away from each other. Rosalind turned slowly, as if her body refused to obey. When she saw him, her face went completely pale. "Sam? What are you doing here?" Her voice came out as a shaky, barely audible whisper. He walked toward her. His steps measured and deliberate. He didn't raise his voice. But his eyes held a look she had never seen before. A look of pure, chilling finality. "Get your things," he said. "We're leaving. Now." She burst into tears immediately, grabbing the dress that was lying on a nearby chair. Her hands shook so badly she could barely manage the buttons. Some of the women started protesting, saying he couldn't just barge in, that it was an invasion of privacy. He didn't respond to any of them. Beatrice tried to block his path. "You can't just." "I can," he cut her off, his voice firm. "And I'm leaving with my wife." He took Rosalind by the arm, not hurting her, but with a grip that made it clear there was no negotiation. He walked her through the house, her sobs echoing beside him, until they reached the front door. The walk to the car was silent, heavy, suffocating. He opened the passenger door and she got in, still crying. He shut the door harder than he meant to. He drove back home in complete silence. The trip took less than 10 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Rosalind cried, trying to speak between sobs. "Sam, please. Let me explain. I didn't mean for this." He didn't answer. He kept his eyes fixed on the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. At home, he parked in the garage, got out, and walked inside without waiting for her. She followed, stumbling over words and tears. In the living room, he finally turned to face her. His face was a mask of pain, and something that looked unnervingly like contempt. 3 months, Roz, he said quietly, his voice almost calm. 3 months where you left this house, looked me in the eyes, kissed me, and went off to do that. 3 months of lies. She shook her head, desperate. "It wasn't like that, Sam, I swear. The girls, they pushed me. I let myself get carried away. It was a weakness. I didn't think." He pulled out his phone, opened the video, and turned the screen toward her. No words were needed. The footage showed exactly what anyone would understand. Closeness. Intimacy. Betrayal. Rosalind covered her mouth with her hands, a choked sob escaping her lips. "That doesn't look like someone who got carried away once," Samuel said, his voice still quiet, but sharp as glass. "It looks like someone who chose this. Week after week." He paused. It was 12 Wednesdays. 12. She couldn't answer. She just cried and trembled. And in that silence, something inside Samuel closed off completely. He picked up his phone again, opened his contacts, and started scrolling. He recognized the names. Dr. Finch, Jenna's husband. Marcus, the financial advisor, Catherine's husband. 2 or 3 other men. Rosalind, realizing what he was about to do, threw herself at his feet, clutching his legs. "Sam, please don't. Don't do this. Please, I'm begging you. You'll destroy families." "I didn't destroy anything," he replied, his voice devoid of all emotion. "I'm just showing everyone what was already broken." He attached clips of the video to a short, direct message. "Your wives aren't at a book club. I'm sorry I'm the one who has to show you this, but I thought you deserved to know the truth." He hit send. Several names on the screen lit up as the messages went out. Then he dropped the phone onto the coffee table. Rosalind collapsed to her knees. "You destroyed my life," she cried. "You destroyed everything." Samuel looked down at her with a coldness that surprised even himself. I just took off the mask you put on me first, he replied. I didn't start this. The phone started vibrating almost immediately. Messages poured in. Shock. Disbelief, rage. One of the women, probably Jenna or Catherine, sent a threatening message about suing him for invasion of privacy. Samuel ignored it all. He walked to the closet, grabbed a blanket, and returned to the living room. He lay down on the sofa, turning his back to her. Go to the bedroom, he said, not looking at her. I don't want you near me. She climbed the stairs. Her sobs echoing through the house that suddenly felt too big, and too cold, to be called a home. The next morning, before sunrise, Samuel was already awake. His body ached from sleeping on the sofa, but his mind was strangely clear. The storm of emotion had passed, leaving behind a vast, empty calm. He made coffee, opened his laptop, and started researching divorce lawyers. By 8 a.m., he had an appointment scheduled for that afternoon. When Rosalind came downstairs around 9, her eyes swollen and red, he was sitting at the kitchen table. Sam, please? Can we talk? Can we try? He raised his hand, cutting her off. I'm filing for divorce today, he said bluntly. You should probably find a lawyer, too. We can try therapy, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I'll change. I'll do anything you want. There's nothing to fix, he replied firmly. You threw away trust. Without that, there's no marriage. The meeting with the lawyer was straightforward. Gregory Townsend, an experienced attorney, watched the video in silence. Then closed his laptop. This kind of evidence makes it a simple case of adultery, he commented, his tone matter of fact. It will definitely impact asset division in this state. The down payment on the house. Where did it come from? My grandfather's inheritance, Samuel explained. That works heavily in your favor, the lawyer said, taking notes. The following weeks were a blur of paperwork. Cold emails exchanged between lawyers. Boxes scattered around the house. They divided their belongings like archaeologists excavating a dead civilization. They hardly spoke. The neighborhood, of course, did not stay indifferent. Within the first 48 hours, 5 couples had announced separations. Dr. Finch confronted Jenna that same night. Their divorce was finalized in 3 months. Marcus discovered Catherine had been using joint funds for gifts and outings. Their case dragged on for nearly a year in a bitter court battle. There were 2 husbands who chose to forgive. Or at least, to stay. One was a local pastor. The other was an older man who seemed simply too tired to fight. Beatrice, the hostess, faced the harshest consequences. Her husband, the corporate executive, flew home early, confronted her, and filed for divorce. He put the house on the market the same month. Rosalind fought until the very end. She sent Samuel daily messages. Left handwritten letters under his door. In one, she wrote, I know I destroyed what we had. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I love you. If you give me a chance, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I did. Samuel read the letter once, then threw it in the trash. He blocked her number. The divorce was finalized in just under 6 months. The judge recognized the clear adultery, noted the source of the home's down payment, and ruled that the majority of the sale proceeds would go to him. Still, staying in Crestwood Hills felt impossible. Every corner held a memory. Every neighbor's glance carried pity, curiosity, or judgment. Exhausted, Samuel accepted a transfer to another branch of the company, nearly 1,500 miles away. Rosalind eventually packed her things and moved back in with her parents in a small town a few hours away. 9 months after the day everything came to light, Samuel was driving down the interstate. His belongings were ahead of him in a moving truck. He had already visited the new apartment. A modern, anonymous place in a busy city where no one knew him, and no one knew his story. As he drove, he thought of Rosalind for what he decided would be the last time. He felt no anger, no longing. The closest feeling he could identify was a profound indifference. It was like remembering a character from a book he had read a long time ago. He had lost 3 years of his life. A house. A dream of a family. But at the same time, he felt he had gained something precious. Clarity. Clarity about boundaries, about respect, about the value of his own peace. When he passed the sign marking the border between states, he glanced quickly in the rearview mirror. Then, he adjusted it. And turned his eyes back to the road. There was nothing behind him worth reaching for. The future, though uncertain, was his. He didn't know if he would ever trust someone the same way again. But right then, it didn't matter. He was alive. He was free. And for the first time in a long, long time, he felt something close to hope. The road stretched ahead. Long and open. Samuel pressed the accelerator a little harder. Leaving behind not just a place, but an entire life that no longer made sense to call home. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.